other than Deacon Kawhariebie Ken Pela,
Thank you.
who is a gubernatorial candidate on the platform of the Labour Party for Delta State.
I have a vision to build a state where righteousness, harmony, and prosperity reigns. And when I talk about righteousness, because I'm a deacon, people will automatically think I'm talking about church. No, righteousness simply means doing the right thing. All right? Accountability and integrity, fairness, equity, and justice, the rule of law. So we believe that if we enthrone righteousness in governance, there will be harmony. It would be very difficult except the person just wants to cause trouble. And even if he just wants to cause trouble, because there are people like that, even if he just wants to cause trouble, by the time you simply point to, but this is the right thing, he will back off. So once you enthrone righteousness, there will be harmony. And when you have those two, you create an environment where prosperity thrives.
And so we are confident that the good Lord willing, and you get in there, that you will remember. You will remember your promise to our audience.
I definitely will.
And that we will hold you accountable.
Please.
And that as you practice this, it be open and transparent, and you report it. Let the people of Delta see and feel the justice, equity, and righteousness.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to say in the area of love and equity and unity for Delta before we move on to the other sections?
I would, as you were talking, I remember worry. What epitomizes Delta is worry. And the way the people used to live, you didn't know whether you were Orobo, whether you were Ijo, whether you were Ishekiri, whether you were Igbo indeed, whether you were from any other part of Nigeria, you just knew yourself as worry people. Worry is basically what epitomizes what Delta was. Mm-hmm. All right? And that's the kind of spirit we would like to bring back to Delta.
That resonates with me. And let me make a confession here that actually some of my own very early childhood, when I was 4 and 5 and 6, were spent in Warri and Sapele. My parents worked in the Federal Civil Service. And so we moved around a lot. And he served as a medical practitioner, as a doctor in Warri and later in Sapele.
I see.
Yeah. So yes, I do have a link and a love for Delta,
and memories of that kind of life.
Yes, we were very well accepted. He enjoyed his days as a practitioner, even though I was little. The memories stayed. So well done. We will then move on to the next area, and that is when I ask you about the common good. What is your understanding of that? And it's a particularly pregnant and loaded question for Delta, which is one of the areas where the resources of this country come from. For me, the common good implies that there are resources which should belong equally to everybody. Tell us what you think, what is your understanding of common good, and how are you going to make that a part of your policy?
All right. My understanding of the common good is that what is good for one should be good for all. What belongs to everybody should be for everybody. not for some people. We've had a situation where for several years, some people have cornered the wealth of everybody. My understanding of what government should do should be not necessarily to share the money for everybody, but to use the resources that we have to make the environment better for all of us and to make life easier for all of us. And in making the environment better for all of us, it would mean providing the kind of infrastructure that makes lives easier for all of us. It would mean providing the kind of health care that makes life better for all of us. It will mean providing the kind of education that makes life easier and better for all of us. It would mean, now, where I want to go next is a bit different from what we understand government to be here. To a large extent, in this country, government has been seen as where you share the cake that is given to you. My perspective from my background is that of the private sector. My background is that of banking. My background is that of entrepreneurship. So it would mean also baking a bigger cake for all of us. Because if we continue to share from the little cake that we have and the population is growing, the cake, what gets to everybody, will be smaller.
Gets less and less.
So unless we are able to bake more and produce more, our lives will get worse. So that's why I said a bit different. While you're trying to put those things in place, it is necessary to begin to grow the economy of the state so that our lives will get better. So it goes beyond using what we receive judiciously. It goes beyond that to being able to produce more so that the people would receive more, the economy would receive more. So that's my understanding of the common good. It is critical, especially in a state like Delta, because the kind of resources that have come into that state in the last 20 years, 24 years, 23 plus years is, I believe, should have been able to have turned Delta into the common thing that people say, into a mini Dubai, But I'm saying that not just to be a cliche, but with all sense of seriousness, that things could be a lot better. And by God's grace, we will be leading a government where, to borrow from my principal, public money will be used for public good.
Public money will be used for public good, which is perhaps equivalent to the common good.
Yes. Yes.
It seems logical, it seems obvious, and it is the tragedy of this country that we have not been succeeding in doing that. Mm-hmm. Because if we had, roughly 80% or more of us would not be in abject poverty. So yes, so we say it, and therefore we, on the stage and the audience, are holding you to your promise. That when you go there, when you get there, you will remember that the common good means that whatever resources we have, and indeed, as you have said, expand. We need to generate more if it's going to be sustainable. Will be judiciously applied to the good of the majority of the people in Delta State.
Yeah.
Yes. It seems like a dream, but it isn't a dream. It is what should be. It is really only the right thing to do.
To do right.
And let me say, I don't speak from a position of authority, but sometimes the sage likes to be the sage and say that, and for you perhaps in Delta, you need to be a further step ahead of the rest of us. Your major resource at this point in time comes from the rich oil resources.
Very true.
But in this period in the world of environmental degradation and concern, the Delta also needs to be one step ahead in thinking about, as we transition, and if the day comes eventually, as it needs to for the sake of the planet, your major resource is not oil. What are your thoughts on that future for Delta?
Now, what we intend to do will be to transition Delta beyond. Right now, I talked about growing the cake when I spoke. There are a few things that, I talked about enthroning righteousness, creating harmony, and engendering prosperity. Now, what that means when I talk about engendering prosperity, there are 7 key pillars to that, 7 key prosperity drivers that we have identified. And those are the ones that we have identified at this point. We expect that will expand, okay? Because from the outside looking in, and then also without total preparation, you have identified this. There are others as we go along that have come up that we would also utilize. Now, the first of them is we intend to, there's 100 million at least that goes to every local government in the country. To a large extent, that money is not being used for common good. So we're going to ensure that the local government authorities would be held accountable for every single. First of all, the money will get to them, because that is first one of the problems that exists. As it is today, the monies go through the states to the local governments, and that in that toll gate, what gets to the local government is usually less than what is allocated to them.
Which was a recent charge by the head of state.
Yes, when he gave an executive order that they should, take money directly to the local government. So we'll ensure those monies get to them, all right? And we'll ensure they are held accountable for every single kobo of that money. They are accountable to the people in their local government. They would have to account for what comes in every year to the people. We would, as part of that plan, improve the quality of the kind of people that work at the local governments, that lead the local governments, and ensure that they use that mandate to develop the local governments, not just in terms of providing minimum basic infrastructure, but in terms of building the economies of the local government. To go with that, we intend to have a social investment program directed at small and medium enterprises. That's why when you were talking earlier on about your programs,
Conversations for change, and what we do.
Yes, it resonates with me, because we intend to provide ₦1 million loans, interest-free loans, to 100 people every month per local government. Interest-free loans payable over 4 years to 100 people per local government. So you're talking about 1,200 people per year per local government. 4,800 people in one tenure for 4 years, times 25 local governments of the state. All right. They will provide their plans, which will be reviewed by a committee, which would also include bankers. All right. And they will select from that committee those who will be entitled to those loans. That, we believe, will drive the economies of the local government in terms of small and medium-scale enterprises, which is the engine of growth of every economy.
You know, I am tempted, I cannot help it now, to butt in. Hold your thought, don't let me disrupt it. But to say that this is such an important point, that I need to link it, like you had mentioned, with what C4C does. Okay. Because we recognize that the future economy of every state and of this country rests with the success of these medium-scale enterprises. Yes. And we stress particularly ones run by young people, because they are a majority, they're everywhere. Yeah. But we also recognize the fact that we need to empower them so that they run those businesses effectively. That's right. So we look forward to that, so that we can partner, provide the skills, training, so that they understand what it means to manage a business. Definitely. So that your scheme will indeed succeed.
Definitely. That's why I said it resonates with me, because again, we won't just provide those monies without the necessary training to ensure they succeed. Now, to complement that, we intend to build 10 new cities. 10 new cities, there are 10 federal constituencies in Delta. So one per federal constituency. 10 new cities that will be private sector driven.
Okay.
That will be agro-industrial and tech-driven cities. So in one federal constituency, we'll identify an industry that is based on the comparative advantage of that area. And so you will then have the full value chain that grows on the back of that. The economy will grow on the full value chain of that industry. Okay, it could be agricultural, it could be, but each of those cities would be technologically driven. They would have a backbone that provides the kind of internet services and all that, because we can't do it all over Delta at once. So the idea would be to create 10 model cities that would attract investment, that will attract the picture, a city that has, as we do the roads, we provide ducts for gas. We provide ducts for water. We provide pipes for everything that is required. Now, when you have provided infrastructure for gas, someone will gather the gas that is being flared to begin to sell to people through the pipes in those cities. That in itself will generate a lot of jobs and industry, right? Those cities will be connected by multimodal transport, rail and roads that also have the same kind of characteristics as the roads within the cities, so that they are all linked. Another key point is power and gas utilization. Those cities will have 24-hour electricity. That's one of the key drivers for development. One of the businesses I'm involved in is power. I'm chairman of a company that does captive power, an independent power producer. So I understand a bit about power, and I do understand that one of the weakest links apart from the fact that power generation is a problem, but the bigger problem is transmission and distribution. So if you have distributed generation, okay, so you're generating in different locations in each of those locations, for example, it becomes a lot easier to be able to solve the power problem. Right now, across the country, we're trying to, apart from the fact that they try to do toll gates with all their federal laws and everything, all right, the transmission is a big problem. Then we're looking at reviving, we have a lot of moribund industries in Delta. You grew up in Sapele, you know about AT&P, you know, there's the steel plant, the refinery is dead. There's so many. We would work with each of those places to try and ensure that those industries are all revived. Then there's also social housing schemes. Now, I did say that the cities complemented the social investment scheme. So social housing is something else that, because housing, land is a means of creating wealth. So those entrepreneurs that are being empowered with those would, part of what you could give them is land. Part of what you could give them is cheap housing, which is a source of wealth, which then helps them to expand their businesses because they then have collateral to get more loans. Okay, so we have a plan that it's all interwoven, all right, to ensure that we're able to grow a bigger economy that at the end of the day will not be dependent on oil.
You know, this is absorbing, and I have a lot more questions. But at this point, we'll take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you to move into the next segment. But because it is closely aligned with what you're saying, you can still delve on any of the other elements of the investment program that you haven't discussed.
All right.
We'll be back shortly, and when we come back, we will continue with this amazing discussion.
Thank you.
It's a privilege to have a gubernatorial candidate, and this time for Delta State, one of them, to talk to us, open his heart and tell us what he's sincerely going there to do in a way that is more real than a manifesto, in a way that allows us to sit intimately with you and hear you talk and judge you in our hearts and in our spirit. Welcome once again to the Sage, and it's been so exciting. It's been so exciting, and we have had, and we still have, Deacon Ken Pela. He has a beautiful other name, which I don't go near, talking to us, opening his heart, his dreams to us. And before we took a break, he talked about the common good. And that means really managing the resources of Delta and what he hopes, he plans, not just hopes, he's confident he's going to get there.
Yes.
What he plans to do to better the resources of the people of Delta State and make sure that people everywhere get it. So, but I move on to another area that is connected to that in a way. And ask you, yes, you've talked about your recognition of the fact that you need to be a united people, a people that love Delta and Nigeria, a people who see fairness, righteousness in dealings with them, and therefore are unified as a group. You've talked about your resources, abundant, theoretically at least within Delta, which needs to be increased and redistributed in a way that every Deltarian, is there a word like that? Deltan.
Yes.
Feels a sense of belonging, a sense of being a part of it, ownership. You were discussing elements of your investment group, but I want, even as you want to discuss that later, to turn to you and say, but what makes you, Ken Pela, think you are positioned to offer your service? What are your skills? What are your competencies? What makes you the best person for that job?
Well, I believe that I have been prepared for this. I believe that, okay, my name is Kawhariebie. It means that it's the canoe that you came with, that you will paddle. Simply means destiny. So, from the perspective of my birth and where I come from, I believe I'm destined for this. My father was a teacher, a strong disciplinarian. He was a principal of Baptist High School, Agbo, and Baptist High School, Benin, then later Baptist High School, Ororokbe. He brought us up as people who feared the Lord and, more importantly, upheld truth and justice. Now, he used to tell me that he had two first sons. My eldest brother, he's late now, was the first son. And then he had the first 6 children and then went to school. He was a teacher and then was sent to school by the missionaries and was away for 5 years. And when he came back, he had me. That's why I used to say there was
a 5-year gap.
Yeah, there was a 5-year gap. So I'm the second first son. Now, when...
May I say that we share that commonality? In my family, there was a 4-year gap.
Okay.
Between my older sister and myself.
And yourself.
And he did further specialization in the UK, came back.
Okay, that's interesting.